Hi, welcome back to the Gemara in Bava Kamma, Daf Pei Vav Amud Bet. We're going to start with the Mishnah and then do a short piece of the Gemara. Hamavayeshet ha'arum, hamavayeshet ha'suma, v'hamavayeshet ha'yashen, chayav. Someone who embarrasses or humiliates someone who's naked, someone who humiliates someone who's blind, or someone who humiliates someone who is sleeping, is chayav, is obligated in the boshet payment. The yashen shebiyesh, patur. And a sleeping person who embarrasses someone else is exempt from that payment. Nafal min hagag v'hiziku biyesh, chayav. If someone falls off the roof and simultaneously causes damage and humiliates someone, all in the course of falling off the roof, they are chayav, they are obligated for nezek, chayav al ha-nezek, they are chayav for the nezek payment, upatur al ha-boshet, but they are exempt from the boshet payment, ad she'ehen mitkaven, until they have intent. In other words, the fact that there was no intent to do anything to anybody else in falling off the roof means that even though they damage the person accidentally, they're still chayav for nezek, but they're patur, they are not chayav. They are exempt from paying the boshet payment. Now we'll move on to the Gemara. We're skipping a little bit of the beginning of the discussion in the Gemara and picking up with Bai Rav Ava. Bai Rav Ava bar Ramal. This is a question. That's what Bai means. So there was a question asked by Rav Ava bar Ramal. By Sho Yashen Bamet Mahu. If someone embarrasses someone who's sleeping, and then the sleeping person dies without waking up and realizing that they had been humiliated, Mahu, what is the halachic ruling in that case? What should happen? My kamibayile. Gemara asks a follow-up question on that question. What exactly is being asked? What exactly is the question that Rabbi Abba bar Ramal is asking? Amar Rav Zvid. Rav Zvid says, so let's just be clear, this is a question that's really in some ways based off of the Mishnah, because the Mishnah says that if you embarrass a sleeping person, you are chayav, right? Mivayeshet hayashen chayav. And in this case, you did embarrass a sleeping person, but the person died without ever knowing that they had been humiliated. And that sort of leaves an opening for the Gemara to ask this question, because it seems to assume that part of the Mishnah's assumption about the sleeping person is that they will wake up. They will eventually wake up, and even though they might not experience the humiliation right now, they might experience it later on. But this is a person who's never going to experience the humiliation because they die without waking up. So what's the psak halacha? And then the follow-up question is, what is Rabbi Abba bar Ramal really asking? Amar Rav Zvid. Rav Zvid answers, Hachi kamabayile. Here's what he's asking. So the explanation of the question is the answer. Mishum kisufahu, v'hamaitle, v'leitle kisufa. Is it because of kisufa? Is it because of embarrassment or humiliation? And this person died, and they have no feeling of humiliation. In other words, what triggers the boshet payment? Why is it that someone has to pay boshet? If it's because of humiliation, if it's because of the feeling of humiliation that the person might experience, so this person doesn't experience any humiliation. They were asleep when the humiliation happened, and they die without ever waking up. O dilma mishum ziluta. Or perhaps it's because of degradation. In other words, they were embarrassed, presumably in front of other people. There's some degradation that happens minimally. The embarrasser knows that this person was embarrassed. So dilma mishum zilutahu, maybe it's because of degradation. Vaho uzlai. And the person was the sleeping person who died without ever waking up to realize they'd been humiliated, but they were in fact degraded. That did happen, whether or not they were able to experience it. So kisufa, on the one hand, seems to be the humiliation that the person themselves experiences, and ziluta has to do with sort of a more public perception or perception of other people about whether or not your status is lower or you've been shamed or degraded in some way. So this is Rav Zvid's explanation of Rabbi Avraham question, and now the Gemara can address the question. Tashma. So here's an attempt at an answer to the question. Tashma means come and hear or come and learn, and usually brings a Tanaitic source, so this one brings a Breita. Rabbi Meir Omer, Cheresh v'katan yesh lahen boshet. Shote ein lo boshet. So Rabbi Meir says in this Breita that a deaf-mute person and a minor, someone who's, let's say, under the age of bar mitzvah, both of them, they do get compensation for humiliation. Yesh lahen boshet means if humiliated, they would get that payment. Shote ein lo boshet, but someone who's mentally incompetent, a shote, does not get that payment. Is not able to experience whatever it is sufficiently to deserve that payment. Putting this also in green because it's an answer. If I were making a structure chart, though, I would note that really Rav Zvid's answer is the answer to this second question of Ma'ika Mibayule, and the Tashma comes to answer this first question as clarified by Rav Zvid. Okay, so this Breita is attempting to answer the question of what we should do in the case of somebody who is asleep, gets embarrassed, and then dies without ever waking up. So the proof text is that certain types of people don't get the payment, and one type of person does get the payment. So let's figure out how this works. If you were to say that it makes sense if this is because of ziluta, in other words, if the payment, the boshet payment, is triggered because of degradation, then this Breita makes sense. Hainu de katani katan. And that is why the Breita teaches katan. In other words, a katan is not able to feel humiliated, or doesn't feel humiliated when something happens. A minor is too young to feel humiliation, but nevertheless, there is degradation that goes on. Other people know about it. So degradation did happen, and that's why the katan that's why you're chayav, that's why you're obligated in this payment if you humiliate the katan in this Breita. So this Breita seems to argue for the fact that the trigger for the boshet payment is ziluta, actually, is this degradation, in which case the answer to Rabbi Avraham question would be, yes, you are chayav because there's still ziluta. Ella iyamart mishum kisufa, but if you said that it's because of kisufa, if you tried to say that the payment is triggered because of the humiliation that the person themselves feels, katan bar boshetu? Question mark, exclamation point. Can a katan actually feel boshet? I'm going to say that this all sets up a challenge to the answer. It must be, it's an interpretation and a challenge. You could play it different ways depending on how you want to structure chart it. But it must be that we interpret the trigger for the boshet payment as being ziluta, because if it's kisufa, it doesn't make any sense to say that, as the Breita does, to say that katan gets a boshet payment, because according to the Gemara, a katan doesn't actually feel humiliation in the same way. Elamai, rather what? So, in other words, this is a challenge. Well, okay, so which is it? Really? Which one actually triggers the boshet payment? Mishum ziluta afilo shote nami. If it's because of ziluta, if the reason for the payment is because of ziluta, then even a shota is capable of degradation. They're still degraded in the eyes of others. So if the whole reason behind the Breita, if the Breita assumes that the reason behind the boshet payment is ziluta, then the shota, it should say yesh lahen boshet. This is sort of, I'm putting it as a challenge because it's a challenge to the challenge. Amri shota ein lacha boshet gdola mizeh. Amri, the response of the Breita would be, for a shota, there is no greater degradation, or there is no greater humiliation. In other words, no, a shota can't even can't even have that degradation piece. The fact that people know that this person is mentally incompetent means that there's no degradation involved. Mikol makom, nifshot minad mishum zilutahu. Nevertheless, we should learn from here, or let's learn from here. Let's interpret this as saying that it's because of ziluta, that the reason for the boshet payment is because of ziluta. Mishum kisufa katan bar kisufaha. Because if it's because of kisufa, can a katan have kisufa? Right? Again, we say we've resolved the shota issue, and we go back to our problem with katan. It doesn't make sense to say, according to the Gemara, that a katan actually experiences kisufa, actually experiences boshet. And so we have to say that it's not this experience of personal humiliation that triggers the need to pay this boshet payment. It's actually the larger picture of degradation that other people know that this happened to the person in question. Kiza Amar Rav Papa, as Rav Papa said, that they embarrass him. Literally, this means they embarrass him, and he becomes embarrassed. And here too, the case is that they embarrassed him. That was something done to embarrass the person, and they actually became embarrassed. In other words, the Breita must be talking about a minor who was actually old enough to feel personal humiliation. Right? This is a minor. Rav Papa explained the Breita. Right? This Breita is talking about a minor who is old enough to feel degradation. There are cases like that. And so here too, here also in the Breita, they embarrassed him and he experienced embarrassment. In other words, the response to the challenge is, this is a response to the challenge, but it's basically saying, or a response to the question, it's basically saying, no, we can't really prove that from the Breita. We can't prove from the Breita that the trigger for the boshet payment is ziluta, because actually the katan and the Breita could also experience kisufa. And so we haven't really resolved Rabbi Abba bar Mamal's question. We're not sure which one triggers the boshet payment, whether it's kisufa or ziluta. We haven't come up with a proof that's really determines which one it is. We shot down this proof, but what we have concluded is that there are different types of katan. Some minors are old enough to experience personal humiliation, and some are not. You could think for yourself about what age you think would be the age at which a child can experience embarrassment, does experience embarrassment, versus a child that does not. Okay, we'll stop there.